This happened in 2018 when I was a senior in high school. We lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside of Denver, the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked and kids rode their bikes into dusk. It was the end of October, just before Halloween, and my parents had gone out of town for the weekend to visit my aunt in Phoenix. It wasn't unusual for them to leave me alone for a weekend, especially now that I was 17 and responsible enough to handle it. Or at least that's what we all thought.
That Saturday night, I was home alone. I ordered some pizza, played video games, and binge-watched horror movies. I even remember thinking it would be fun to freak myself out a little. Around 1:30 a.m., I turned off the TV and went to the kitchen to grab a glass of water before bed. That's when I noticed the backyard porch light was on. We had a swing set in the backyard, left over from when my little sister was younger. I glanced outside through the kitchen window and saw something that made my stomach drop. One of the swings was moving. Not swaying slightly in the breeze, but really moving. Like someone had just jumped off it. My heart started to race, but it got worse. I saw him. A man stood just a few feet behind the swing set, completely motionless. He was tall and wearing a long coat or a trench coat. His head was slightly tilted forward, and he had some kind of hood or cap obscuring his face. He was too far in the shadows for me to see his features, but I could feel that he was staring right at me. I killed the lights in the kitchen and ducked down. My heart was beating out of my chest. I grabbed my phone from the counter and dialed 911. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I told the dispatcher there was someone in my backyard. She stayed on the line and told me to stay calm. I peeked out again. The man hadn't moved. A few minutes later, red and blue lights washed over the house. I heard footsteps and voices. The police had arrived. I ran to the front door and let them in. 2 officers went into the backyard while another stayed with me, but when they came back, they hadn't found anyone. No footprints, no signs of forced entry, nothing. One of them tried to suggest it might have been shadows or an animal. I knew better. That man was there. He was real. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept the lights on and stayed in my room with a baseball bat beside the bed. Around 3 a.m., I thought I heard something outside again. This time, it was a soft creaking, like the swing set moving again. I didn't look. I couldn't. I just curled up under the blanket and waited for morning. When my parents got home the next day, they were freaked out. My dad checked all the windows and doors. Everything was locked. But we never figured out who that man was or how he disappeared so quickly. I stopped watching horror movies for a while after that because someone was outside, and I think they wanted in. This happened during winter break in 2019, my sophomore year of college. I was back home with my parents in upstate New York. We lived in a pretty isolated area, long driveways, thick woods, no neighbors in sight. It snowed heavily that week, so I stayed indoors most of the time, reading and watching movies. One night, I was alone in the living room, scrolling through my phone, when I heard something that made my blood run cold. Music, that classic jingle from an ice cream truck, but it was January. There was snow piled up on the lawn. It was 10 p.m. There shouldn't have been any ice cream trucks. I got up and peeked through the window. Headlights. A white truck with faded cartoon decals slowly crept down our road, playing that eerie tune. It was barely moving, crawling past our driveway. I couldn't see anyone in the driver's seat. It stopped 2 houses down. The music played for a minute longer, then abruptly cut off. No one got out. The engine kept idling. I watched for almost 10 minutes. Then I lost my nerve and shut the curtain. My heart wouldn't stop pounding. I told myself it was probably just some weird prank or a delivery truck using the wrong sound. But I knew better. Around 1 a.m., I woke up from a restless sleep and got up to get some water. As I passed the front hallway, I noticed something through the side window. The truck was now in our driveway. No lights, no music, just sitting there.
I ducked down behind the wall and tried to stay calm. I could barely breathe. I didn't see anyone inside, but it was too dark to tell. I crawled to my parents' room and woke them up. My dad grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. When he got there, the truck was gone. Just like that. No sound, no headlights, no tracks in the fresh snow. It was like it vanished.
The next morning, we checked the security camera. It glitched the moment the truck pulled into the driveway, a full minute of static. Then it resumed, with the truck gone. We reported it to the local police. They said they'd look into it, but we never heard anything back. No one else in the neighborhood saw or heard anything. And we never saw that truck again. But I know what I saw, and I know it was real. Someone was outside, watching.
This happened during the lockdown in early 2020. I had just moved into a new apartment in Seattle, a fifth-floor unit in a modern building with huge windows that overlooked a quiet residential street. It was the kind of place that made you feel like you were floating above the world. I lived alone, and like everyone else at the time, I spent most of my days inside, isolated. It was a Friday night. I had made tea and was curled up on the couch watching YouTube. I remember the clock said 11:03 p.m. The windows stretched from floor to ceiling. I usually didn't bother closing the blinds because I was 5 stories up. Who was going to see me? That night, I turned toward the window to grab my phone from the side table. And that's when I saw it. A face. A man's face, inches from the glass. He was outside, staring in. My body locked up. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I just stared. His eyes were wide, almost too wide. His mouth was pressed into a sick grin, and his skin looked wet, pale and glistening like he had just climbed out of a river. Then he was gone. I dropped the mug I was holding, and it shattered. I ran to the window and looked down. No one. I looked up. Just empty sky. There was no ledge, no balcony, just sheer wall. I checked the hallway. I even knocked on the neighbor's door, nothing. I tried to tell myself it was a trick of the light. Maybe I was tired, maybe I imagined it. But the next morning I went down to throw out the trash. I looked up at my window from the street, and I saw it. A muddy handprint on the outside of the glass. Perfectly shaped. Humans. I called the building manager. He checked the security feed. Nothing. No one entered the building. No maintenance. No work orders. I moved out a week later. I didn't care about the lease or the deposit. I couldn't stay another night. Because someone was outside. And they were too close.